So for our next talk, yes, I'm actually gonna hand it off to Jan in just a second. He was able to be here with us because,
Yay!
thanks to him and Ace and their generosity, we're able to be here. So it's kind of cool to have one speaker in the studio as well. Um, yes, your talk is mostly about VFX supervision.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I have the advantage of having a very small audience here by being here in person. The disadvantage, however, having to fill the shoes of Sava the Beast Zivkovic. But yeah, let's see if I can manage.
Cool. Well, I'm just going to let you take it away then,
All right,
and
cool.
we'll have some questions after. So, yeah, if you want to ask questions, be sure to do it in the relevant Discord channel. And yeah, go for it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so thanks again for inviting me over to talk about it. The presentation is live. All right. All right. Great. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about VFX supervision, why it works for me, how I ended up doing it here in Europe. Talk because I see the audience is mostly art-based guys, so it's gonna be a really broad talk. I'll make sure to sprinkle in some moving images now and again. To keep you guys, to keep the attention of you guys, but let's dive in. I've provided a structure for this presentation. So four main chapters. I'm gonna talk a little bit about myself, what VFX supervision is, why I like it, and then end up with some tips and tricks and some lessons I've learned along the way. Most of those lessons can be applicable to any profession or any professional endeavor you set yourself on. So yeah, hope it will be a useful talk for you guys. So hello, my name is. This was the slide that was in the template I used. I thought it was funny, so I kept it in. Short and straight to the point. Your audience will appreciate that. So let's try. So I am Jan DAGHELINCKX. I'm a hack from Antwerp. So almost 40. I got 3 daughters. I love movies, video games, good stories. I continuously fail at eating healthy and going to bed on time, but I do visual effects for a living. I work for film and TV mostly, and I really miss hugging people. Screw you, COVID. Yeah, let's all get vaccinated so we can do these kind of things in person soon. So this is a first reel. It's a breakdown that Nozon did, the company I work for, did at for the Happy Prince. I put it in here because it gives a good impression of the general amount of work that we do for like a typical medium budget VFX film, an independent film here. So there's a lot of a cleanup that needs to happen. This is also a period film, so you see a lot of environment work is there. The shot you just witnessed was the main actor that needed to be placed in the scene because he's not available to shoot with extras, stuff like that. There's also a huge CG ship in the film. That's a lot of fun to work on these things. So not Hulk stuff, but it does give a good idea of the bread and butter of like a wide range of VFX work that needs to happen on these kind of films. Gonna skip to the next one. So yeah, here's some stuff I worked on. Some movies and some TV shows. Local people will probably know some of these. There's some international films in there as well, but yeah, it doesn't really bother me that it's not like Marvel and Star Wars stuff. And I'll get to why that's important and why it could be important for you guys as well later in this presentation. So let's take it back to 1993. Here's me. I'm the third from the left, dressing up as a Templar knight. And the year 1993 is an important year. I think I was 11 at the time. It was the time that a major multiplex opened in Antwerp, and the movie that came out in '93 is, of course, Jurassic Park. If I have to bring it back to one inciting incident, then it was basically around that time. But funny enough, and the next slide will illustrate that, is that it didn't click for me before before long. It took me a while to get to that point, and hindsight is 2020, they say. But let me illustrate. So I started out as a 3D artist. I always loved building things, so modeling in. I love building things, but I'm not a handyman. My wife can attest to that. It's not it's not something I'm good at drilling and building stuff around the house. But I do love creating stuff. So 3D modeling was always something I really like to do. And I started my career as a 3D artist and After Effects Flash animation at the BUT, which is a company that does a lot of business to business e-learning stuff. But then, B2B animations for websites, I thought they were boring, so I want to work for TV. So then I left the company and I became like a 3D artist and compositor at Sabouge, which is an animation studio that also does a lot of advertising, and it works for TV shows, makes leaders, all that kind of stuff. I started as a 3D, more technical artist, doing some of the compositing, and then I ended up being the head of the studio there, which was great because I got to work with a cool team, really nice people. But then I thought, no, it's not really it. It came a little bit toxic in the end. So I went to head the motion design department at Design is Dead, which was an advertising agency at the time. Really cool motion graphics like the one the Mantissa makes were all the rage, and I'm really inspired by that. I still am, so I wanted to do that kind of work. So I joined Design is Dead as a 3D motion designer, and that ended up being a little bit of a short stop, but because then I could start work at Planet X and work on visual effects and work on films as a VFX supervisor. And that's when basically it really clicked for me. So in hindsight, Planet X Belgium, that got scooped up by Ace, and I now manage the VFX projects for Ace, The Fridge, and Nozone. It's a group of companies in Belgium. So looking back at that trajectory, what basically really happened is when I was at BUT and doing B2B, I was just far too young. I didn't know shit. So that's that. I thought, B2B animations for websites are boring, but basically it's not. Looking back at it, I can really see that people are really good at that stuff, and you can create amazing work in that space as well. I was just far too young to appreciate any of that. When at Sabouge, I loved working with the team, but the environment was too toxic, so that's basically why I had to go. And Design is Dead was basically for me an escape route. Like I said, I love beautiful, complex motion graphics, but I had to just realize for myself I can't create those kind of things. That's not how my brain works. I appreciate it, and I can clearly see what is quality and what is not, but I can't come up with it myself. And it takes a certain age. You have to reach a certain point in your career that you can just be honest with yourself and say, oh yeah, that's not it. And then ending up doing visual effects for film and TV, it is this beautiful marriage of technology and creativity and working with larger teams. But the one thing that it also is working in film and TV, it's in service of story, and that is something that none of the ones above had, and that was where it for me really, really, really clicked. This in service of story and working together to get this narrative out. So visual effects supervisor. I'm gonna talk a little bit about what it is I do on a day-to-day basis, or what the process is. VFX supervisor, if you watch a movie or a film, you can see a number of times maybe someone that has a credit that says the VFX supervisor. It's a lot different for studio films, like the one you see the GIF of, an Avengers type thing. It's a lot different for indie European film and TV market. But is one better than the other? Is it like the Hulk beating Thor here? Let me circle back to it and just first address everything that we actually do as a VFX supervisor, or what certain VFX supervisor get to do. So first, yeah, we have to pitch. VFX supervisors are together with the producers involved in building a budget and pitching on projects, and that means reading scripts, trying to think ahead, making sure that that you lift everything possible, and also get jiggy with Excel. So you have to not be afraid of sheets and Excel sheets, because it's a part of your job. Then let's say we can get a project, and then comes pre-production. So a visual effects supervisor, when reading the script and anticipating some problems, figuring out what can you shoot for real, what needs to be CG. You have a budget that's in place. You have to make sure that you can stick within that budget. That's really a skill that you learn over time, anticipating those problems, and then feeding those problems in within pre-production. I bet everybody already heard like the saying that a movie gets written like 3 times. It's on paper and a script, then you shoot the movie, and then you edit the movie, and it's basically a rewrite every time. But rewrites are important for VFX because you make a budget based on the paper, on the script, and then of course in our business sometimes we always aim to do like a final budget when the film is edited, so we know exactly how many shots we have. But for producers, they have a certain amount of money in mind, and it can't differ that much from the one that you lifted just from the text from the script. So that's really important that you safeguard that. But pre-production is actually a really fun place to be in. I'm gonna load the next clip, so you can see a little bit, and I'll talk over it. Pre-production is great because that's when you as a VFX supervisor get to talk with stunt people. You get to talk with the director, with the DOP. You really are preparing to shoot this film, so you're all thinking together in service of the narrative, in service of the visual style that a DOP wants, in service of the story that a director wants to tell with his character. And you're all in this whiteboard kind of space, thinking about how to solve these problems and get to the finish line. What you're seeing on the screen right now is a clip that from a film that we worked on with Planet X at the time, called Bumper Cliff, and we used a platform called Deep Space, which is using real-time engines now to maybe play it again. So yeah. 1 second, yeah. Which is using like a real-time engines to have a DOP with an actual camera in his hand, really block out the scene. And in this case, that was very important, of course, because as you see, we are shooting. You can see the side by side. We are shooting on a freeway. We had limited time available. We had to brief all the stunt drivers, all the position drivers to do exactly what was needed. So to be able to block this out entirely in virtual reality was a major help, and also a lot of effort up front. But of course, it paid dividends in the end, because once we were on the day, it's a lot safer if you know exactly what you're going to do, and you just win time, and that was imperative for this because we only had the freeway closed off for 2 days. So fix it in post? Absolutely fucking not. Fix it in pre-production, always. So what else does a VFX supervisor do? So once we are on the set, there are a lot of responsibilities for on-set VFX supervising. You've probably all seen green screens, putting up markers, shooting pictures, shooting more pictures. Basically, if you break it down, it's take pictures of everything, take notes of everything, and be prepared for everything. So best case scenario, you've done your job as in the pre-production stage as best as possible. You've provided tech viz of how big the green screens need to be, for example, where they need to put up, because you've recce'd the location and everything works fine. But you also have to anticipate that anything can come up, so you need to be prepared for everything. But it's a very fun environment to be in on set, because it really feels like the filmmaking machine rolling ahead. Everybody knows its place. Everybody has this shared responsibility to get to the finish line. It's a very high energy environment, and yeah, I love it. I love it. I love to do it. To go into detail on set supervising, Hugo Guerra has made like these 2 YouTube clips that have all the information, so I can talk a lot more about it. But basically, these are like master classes in itself on all the tools and what you need to do. So I invite you to check them out. He's a great guy. And otherwise, if you have question about a specific subject, just find me in the Discord later. I'll be happy to talk to you about those. But yeah, great YouTube clips here. So we've shot the film. It's in editorial. So what are we gonna do now? We're in a stage we call post-phys. So post-phys, as I've already mentioned, VFX are super expensive, so it's not worth doing them if they're not gonna make the cut. So what the VFX department does, guided by the VFX supervisor, is basically do some quick and dirty mock-ups of maybe environments or action scenes, or especially if we are talking about like CG vehicles or even CG characters. It's definitely worth our time to do like a quick and dirty version that they can use in editorial, that the director can watch it in context in a sequence to see if it's going to end up in the cut or not. Because like an edit of a film can take up to 3 to a year. I was on a project that was a year in editorial, so things can change. And again, this is like what I said, the 3rd time the film gets rewritten is in editorial. So you are still stuck with the rough budget that you made on paper, and of course you're gonna put the dots on the I when we have the finished film, when you have the finished edit, but it can't change that much, so keep that in mind. And then supervising the team. So the film is edited, we have the VFX pool at our studio, and then the VFX supervisor is responsible for dividing it up between the team, making sure the 3D assets are well done, the pipeline is in place. The VFX supervisor is then again the guy that talks to the director, the producer, the DOP in reviewing all those work, and then he liaisons all the feedback back to the different leads, to the 3D lead or to the comp lead, FX lead, and so on. So again, a really interesting position to be in. And then up until delivery of the VFX shot, the VFX supervisor is involved for the grading. Picture you see here is a film I did called Bankier van het Verzet, where we did the final grading in a grading theater in Paris, where they actually graded a Star Wars film, I think The Last Jedi. So also very interesting to be involved in the entire color process of a film. That's also conversations that we start up before we start the work on the VFX shot. But a film that we finished recently, yes, there were some issues with the certain shots in the grading. So then grading bounces a couple of things back to VFX to adjust so it can complement the grading a little bit better. So up until the very end, the VFX supervisor is involved. So that brings us back to the slide we started with, what's in a name, VFX supervisor. So thinking back to these big studio films, like a Marvel and a Star Wars, you basically have a studio VFX supervisor, and he's the one that talks to the director and has the big picture, and he's the guy that's mostly in Excel then, and then the works gets separated out, because of course these big blockbuster movies, they have sometimes over thousands of shots, and they get separated to different VFX studios. Some of them really specified on the type of work that that studio is particularly good at. I'm thinking off the top of my head, for example, Lola VFX. Every time you see some de-aging stuff or VFX that happen around the face, cleaning faces, making people younger or older, Lola is really the place to be. Those VFX houses get to do that type of work. And those studios have their own separate VFX supervisor that is just in charge of that sequence, for example, or that particular 3D character. Or that's for me the huge difference and the appeal in indie European mid-budget films is that as a VFX supervisor, I get to do everything that I talked about in the earlier slides. So from the script, the bidding process, all the way up to the grading, and that is really a really fun place to be in. Honestly, you get to work with teams. You really feel like you are. I think I'm gonna. Oh yeah, sprinkled in a reel. Let's watch it. Why is it not working? Sorry, guys. Here's a reel. Let's watch a reel first, and then I'll talk a little bit further. So this is some of our more CG work we did for documentaries and some advertising. More design-oriented work as well. So all CG. Is it playing as choppy on the stream? Yeah, okay. Some animated films we worked on, Asterix and Minuscule. All right. Yeah, so, but why though? And I was already making that point earlier. So, because you really are filmmaking and you really are in service of that story, which for me personally was a thing that basically put it all together. You're in this focal point in the middle of this fight from the beginning till the finished product, together with the top creative people on a project, which to me are like the director, DOP, the editor, the colorist, stunts, production designer. Those are the people that are really sculpting this film, and you're in the middle of it as a VFX supervisor in the type of projects that you're now working on. Does that mean I don't ever want to work on a Star Wars film? No, but it really is a nice place to be in. All right. So, what does it take? You've seen my career path up until now, so you might be able to say like jack of all trades, master of none. That's a saying that gets thrown around quite a lot, and you could apply that a little bit. I think, like I said myself earlier, I'm a 3D modeler, but yeah, I'm definitely not the best 3D modeler out there. I'm compositor in After Effects, Nuke, dabbled in Fusion, but am I the fastest compositor out there? Hell no. There are some real beasts at our studio that are a lot faster, and I get lost in Houdini for sure, but I can definitely know my way around effects, and I think that is the most important thing. Though when people throw that saying around, then I get a little bit grumpy. This is a drawing one of my colleagues at Sabouche made of me while probably doing some crunch time late at the studio. So I like to say like a generalist of all trades and a master of some. That's the key element here, I think. Because to be a good VFX supervisor, there are a lot of soft skills that basically nobody ever talks about. In when going to talks or going to events, and I'll talk a little bit later about that. People are always very focused on the craft itself, but there's a whole lot on the side about communication, about these soft skills that are very important, especially if your ambition is to be a VFX supervisor, to lead teams, to work with people. You cannot sleep on that thing. So what makes a good VFX supervisor is that you know all these things. You know about modeling, you know about texturing, you know about compositing, but also you need like a great eye for detail, and especially realism. You need like what did I write here on my slide? Curious mind. You need to be a sponge for new technology, and a people person and a team player, and that gets overlooked sometimes. Especially get some wild stories from film sets with egos running wild, but I find it all to be quite okay, to be honest. So some tips and tricks, lessons learned, advice, random stuffs. Just put some things together that really focus on more of these soft skills. I think this talk is not geared toward giving you the one trick pony compositing trick that solves all your problems. But I'm gonna run over some couple of tips and tricks, and I hope you learned something, or stuff that I learned along the way. I was in a podcast recently about the Flemish film, and the guy asked me, if you need to give one piece of advice to young people trying to get into VFX or starting out at a studio, what would it be? And my answer was, ask all of the questions. Just do it. It also highlights a key issue that we have in our world today with COVID, is that we are now onboarding a couple of new guys and junior talent, and they're at the studio and they're from home and they need to communicate through Slack, and it makes it all very, very difficult. But if you find yourself in a studio sitting next to somebody, and you don't know the answer to something, just ask. And not only as a junior, even if you're in a situation where you are considered to be the expert of something and you don't know something, just ask. If somebody doesn't know the answer, then that's fine. Then you together can look for the answer. But ask all of the questions all of the time is my number one tip for people starting out in a studio. Next tip: cultivate some good fucking taste. There is more out there than Marvel and Star Wars. Try to look back. A lot of what is out in popular culture today stems from a long history of storytelling, and it's important to acknowledge that. So look a little bit further. Of course, I enjoy my Star Wars every now and again, for sure. And I loved WandaVision, for example. But there is more out there. Then again, it's important to also acknowledge. What was I? Oh, kind of lost my train of thought. Yeah, so there is more out there than Marvel and Star Wars. But what I also came across is that people that are completely anti Marvel and Star Wars. You also don't want to end up in that spot where you're like considered a film snob. I don't know if it's a word in English as well, but people are that pick their nose up, or like, oh, Star Wars, it's all popular culture and stuff, and give me a good old movie from the 30s. I don't watch any of that shit. Don't be a film snob either. Nobody likes a film snob, and you have to appreciate and realize that there is a real craft and high-end artistry going into making wide audience blockbusters. It's a real science, and it's a real machine, and it's worth thinking about that and appreciating that as well, even if Marvel might not be your genre, or if it is. So just keep an open mind and create some taste. And taste is something that's achieved or that's acquired over time. So Best thing to do is keep an open mind and don't stress about it. But yeah, keep an open mind and try to cultivate some good fucking taste. And next, be honest, be interested and not interesting. That's yeah, it's related to the previous point. Also a little bit to the always ask all of the questions point I was trying to make. Never pretend you know something if you don't. That is key. For example, if you're in a meeting with a director and he comes up with a reference, and you don't know the reference, don't try to be smart and smug about it. Oh yeah, I got that reference. I know exactly what you mean. I've seen that film, or I know this, and then you don't. It always comes out in the end, and you will look stupid. And it's a lot better. Also, from my perspective, let's say I'm in a meeting and I'm briefing somebody, and I take up this random reference from Casablanca of the GIF you saw earlier, and I'm talking, yeah, kind of like Casablanca, kind of like that, you know, when the plane lands in the end and yada yada, and then somebody says, yeah, I know it, and then I find out that it didn't. You get a lot more respect from people if they are really interested in you and say like, I don't know it. Why did you come up with that reference? Why should I watch it? That, yeah, it breeds a lot better sort of relation that you have with people working together if you can feel that they're honest, and if you can communicate on a yeah, on the same level, if you don't have to second guess people. So always try to be honest, and there is no shame in admitting that you don't know something. So keep that in mind. Even if it's human to try and present yourself as best as possible, but it's counterintuitive to lie about these little, even if it's just a small white lie. It's don't do it. Be a photographer. Yeah, that's also a tip I have for especially people that want to work in VFX. And like I said earlier, if you want to go on set, then your camera is your number one tool. But being a photographer and shooting a lot of pictures will really help you with creating that eye for realism. It especially turning your camera to manual. Your camera will not explode. I repeat, your camera will not explode when you put it to manual, but it will give you a sense of how light works, how sharpness, how your camera and lenses influence the sharpness of an image. It helps you learn about compositing or composing a frame, about lensing a shot. So when possible, pick up a camera and shoot some stuff. And again, like I said, if your aim is to be on set and do VFX supervision on a set, then yeah, you need to know your camera inside and out, because on set time is very precious, and the schedule doesn't allow for VFX much time at all. So when you can have an opportunity to get in there between shots and shoot some reference, then you have to make sure that it's good, that you don't fumble, that your batteries are charged, that you know what you're doing, that the images you shoot are sharp, etc., etc. So yeah, be a photographer. Don't sleep on new technology. That's another tip, very broad tip, and I think it applies to a lot of fields, not only VFX supervision. It's also a bit related to my slide about like being a generalist of sorts. So mastery of a skill, it's a beautiful thing. Somebody who is really a master of their craft and spent years and years on honing that skill, I think it's great. It breeds respect from somebody that really put in the dedication and the hours. Yeah, you can make the analogy of like the 10,000 hour rule. I bet you all heard about that. But you can't forget that TV and movies, it's a business. So everything that's a business, that's where you are part of a production process. If it can be optimized, it will be optimized. For example, if you at your studio, you are the roto master, you know everything about rotoscoping. You can do it super fast. You know all the tricks. You know everything about edge. When do I need to go with soft edges? When to go with some harder edges? What can I pay attention to? That's important. What doesn't need to be important? When to use splines? Yada yada yada. For example, you are the roto master, and then right now, like you see in the new release of Nuke, for example, they are on this machine learning path, and there are some new machine learning tools in Nuke that really speed up all the rotoscoping process. Yeah, you could feel like that's like it's a threat to your job, for example, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think you should be aware of this, and you being the master at your studio of that particular thing. I just use rotoscoping as an example, but it could be whatever. It could be like you are the rigger at your studio, and all the main characters that come to you through rigging. It could be anything, but you need to be aware of this new technology and see it as an opportunity. See it as, okay, so I see these tools coming up, this machine learning technology that will possibly eliminate my job. You have to be, this is the opportunity for you to be the guy that proposes this technology into your studio, for example. You put in the time, learn the new tools, and that probably means abandoning some of your workflow that you've been doing for years, that you've been crafting for years. But if you are the guy that brings this to your studio and learns that new process, because it's not just push a button and it's done, it's also a process, and it takes into account a lot of other stuff. Especially when we're talking about machine learning, there's a lot of hardware coming into place and a lot of development coming in. If you are the guy that hones that process, that really masters that part of the pipeline, and can say to your studio, okay, doing it like this and like this will save us money like that, and we can be optimized like this, then again, you have proven your value to your studio by doing it. So don't be afraid of this change. Change is everywhere all the time. Right now, it might feel like there's a lot going on, but look at it as an opportunity, and don't sleep on it. A good resource for that is this YouTube channel called 2 Minute Papers. Probably some of you have known it, but it talks a lot about advances in CG, new CG tools, especially surrounding machine learning. Another good resource is keeping an eye on the SIGGRAPH technical papers. So real-time engines, real-time ray tracing. It's here. It will be something that everybody will be on board with in a couple of years. So don't sleep on it. Next one, nuke like a boss, but don't ignore your social skills. I've talked about it a little bit already. So yeah, be the one that is, you are the ace at your job. Really focus on what you are in your studio, what you're there to do. Make sure that you do it like a boss, that the work you put out is amazing, but don't ignore your social skills. That means that you can't be just locked behind your screen. You have colleagues, you have bosses, and maybe you are a lead and you have to delegate work. These social skills are important. So communication is vital. And if you feel like you are more of a, especially now with COVID, everybody's working from home, it doesn't help, I know. But you really need to sharpen that tool as well from your bag, like communication skills, and it goes beyond just typing polite emails. I think it's reading into people. If you're a lead, figuring out when somebody is, because that's something that I find with a lot of juniors, it's a problem that they don't ask for help soon enough. So that's something that that I consider also under social skills is that you see when problems arise, and that you learn to read people and read their communication. And of course, everything is a lot more difficult now when everybody's working remote and through Zoom calls, etc. So even more an issue today to not ignore your social skills. And a good way to work on those is to go to events. Artists tend to be have a lot of social anxiety. I know I was there once myself. But going to events, and I hope we can next year we can all do it again, is really a good way to work on these things, to learn and train your social skills. And you can really look at it like that. It's there is no reason why you should approach working on yourself and the way you communicate any differently than you would do a Houdini tutorial, or you see a time lapse of somebody painting a concept art piece and trying to learn from that. There is no difference in your approach if that helps you. If you are somebody that is more not as outspoken or more shy, just put it in your head and that frame as, okay, this is something I lack and I'm going to this is something I lack and I'm going to work on it. So go to events, not only inspirational events like DAC-ANT, for example, which is great, but also more tech events like FMX, for example. You get to talk to the people that make the software that you work with every day. So if you end up drinking a beer with somebody that does software development on a tool that you use every day, then and it clicks, then you have the ability to email them afterwards, and it will open up doors for you for sure. And there's a lot of going back and forth over social media about these things. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, ArtStation, these kind of platforms, but nothing beats going to the events and seeing people for real. There's also a picture in there from movie premieres. If you're in the film industry and you have a chance to go to premieres, do it. It's not great fun, and there's free drinks, but movies are made by hundreds of people, and not all these people are gonna work on the same movie afterwards. Everybody branches out again, so you get to talk to people and generate work for yourself like that. Just treat it as a networking opportunity. For sure, very, very valuable to go to events. And to finish up, don't be a dick. I think might be the most important slide of this presentation. Always be nice, always be polite. Don't talk trash behind people's back. It's a very small industry, even though it's spread out globally. Your reputation is as important as your portfolio. From my perspective, I would rather work with somebody that has that I know that can do the job, instead of an ArtStation rock star that's just a nightmare to work with. And I'm not alone in saying that. That's a sentiment that I hear echoing throughout senior people and talking with a lot of supervisors. There is just no place for rock stars in studios, could be just one and then never again. Or you see these people go from studio to studio, but they never come back to the same one because it was just such a nightmare to work with them. So don't be a dick. Sneak peek, some stuff from me that's coming out. Finished a movie called Cool Abdul that's coming out quick, probably more for the local people. We're in production on Ritual, which is a Mo Hyder film. And then Zillion is a project I'm really looking forward to. The notorious dance temple in Antwerp is getting a movie, but the production is delayed because COVID. And then for some of you who recognize him, there's a Lars von Trier project in the works, which I'm super excited about. And then a couple of other things, but that's a good thing. So yeah, that's it from me. I have no idea how I'm doing on time. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. These are some of my details. Feel free to harass me in the Discord. If you like, I'll be here. So, thank you.
All right. That was great. Thank you. Yeah, we have a few quick questions. We'll do them fairly quick fire because
Sure.
your talk went on for a little bit, but I think it was super interesting. A lot of what you
Okay.
said definitely resonated with me as well. It's funny because I worked at the same place
Yeah.
that you worked at not long after you were there. And what you said about having hindsight,
Yeah.
it's totally true. I left because it wasn't like I wasn't feeling like the work was challenging me, but then looking back at it, what I learned there was way like super important to everything I did after. So very cool. All right, so let's do some questions, and then I think we can wrap that up afterwards. So. One of the questions is, do you sometimes use 360 cameras for capture or reference? Do you find they work good for the purpose? Things like HDRI generation, something like that?
Yeah, I've used the first generation Theta 360s. Those are really awesome for quick reference. I haven't used the latest models yet to build the actual HDRIs. I still do it just with a nodal head and a 5D because you just get the resolution there, and it's just a workflow that we're all familiar with at the studio. So we're not changing it but I heard that the new ones are really great, and they can take some real high resolution 360s as well, and also multiple stops. So
that's going to solve a lot of issues that you would have with them before.
Yeah, because doing HDRIs with a nodal head, if you're quite good at it, it doesn't take that long. But if it's just a one-click, one-button solution, then it's
always better. Yeah, because it gives you more time for other stuff on set, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah. So somebody's asking as well, could you talk a little bit about the state of virtual production in Belgium? Do you feel there's a big market for it right now?
Virtual production. We're working on an animated film at the studio as well, also in real time in Unity, and we're doing a lot of virtual. We have a lot of virtual camera tools there at Planet X. When we did Deep Space of the clip that you saw, that's all virtual pre-production. Some of that also went into virtual production, where we had the same technology there to track the cameras. I think basically everybody's has seen the Mandalorian stuff, where they do the live tracking on LEDs behind, and that's already in camera. Spoiler alert, everything in the Mandalorian is still rotoscoped and changed after the fact, so basically it's a very expensive accurate rim lighting that you're getting. But for Bumperkleef, the film that we did the same setup for all the car shots, which is always a nightmare to do. That's if you want to hire Viet compers, quick tip: let them do a car shot through the window, because it's one of the most tricky things to get right, and it really tells you a lot about like
their skill level. And
how if they know how light works, and
I think it's also one of the most common ones you still see done badly today, even in like big budget movies. For sure,
because they get rushed.
Because it's like, it's a car shot, don't worry about it. And
so we did some virtual production on that one, where we had tracking markers on the camera, and then when we shoot the car stuff, the big LED panel changes the background accordingly. So there are a lot of virtual studios popping up in the wake of the Mandalorian stuff across Europe. So I'll definitely see more European films using the same techniques as well. But you need to have a lot of shooting days on a set like that. If it's just for a one-off thing, we will keep doing traditional stuff. because it's quite expensive. The startup cost to get there is quite expensive
Okay.
to do. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we keep having questions coming in, so I'm going to keep shooting them at you. Somebody's asking maybe an obvious one, but with the whole COVID situation, was there any big changes to the way you work? Also, any takeaways you'll be incorporating into how you work going forward when we go back to normal someday, eventually?
Yeah. So for us, we had the good fortune that we were working on a lot of virtual reality projects using real-time technology as well at the studio. So a lot of the 3D artists could pivot a little bit to that. And production on the animated film just kept going, but from home. However, for all the live action compositing stuff, we did see some issues there because if they're not shooting, then we can't.
You can't really do anything.
We
Yeah,
can't really do anything.
of course.
So unfortunately, a lot of our colleagues did suffer from that a little bit. Things are picking up right now, so that's good. There's a lot of stuff in pre-production, so yeah, I hope it gets better soon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to keep going. How did you learn the calculation stuff with VFX Supervision? I think that mainly pertains to
bidding. Yeah, like bidding the stuff.
I don't know. It just says calculation, so I don't know exactly.
Okay,
what
next question,
yeah.
and explain a little bit more what you mean.
Yeah, because it could be anything really.
Yeah.
So also a quick question: an equivalent of an artist's. What brush do you use? I'm dying to know which node do you use.
The copycat node, or what's it called in Nuke? In new Nuke, the machine learning one.
Right. Yeah. And then another one: when filming a no to low budget movie, at which point would you recommend using VFX? Is it too expensive anyway, so don't use it, or does it just heavily depend on which effects the makers want to use?
To clarify, everything you see on TV has VFX. Every single thing has some sort of VFX in it. It's just painting out booms or painting out cars that shouldn't be there in the background. Everything that goes on your screen, if it's a streaming platform or it's a cinema, it has some VFX in there. So you should always, as a production, have that in mind. But for the larger stuff, and people find that very counterintuitive when I say things, but even right now on the movies that are in production right now, if we can do it in camera, I always suggest doing it in camera, because then you save a budget for other stuff that you really can't do in camera. So
and this is gonna look good.
Yeah, and it's gonna look good, and we can always enhance to it. So my go-to is just shoot it for real and then enhance if necessary. With all that stuff. Yeah.
So we have a clarification on that one question. I'm going to skip to the next one, and then we'll do that one in the end. So is there any project that you loved working on and would do again if you could go back in time, and why?
Yeah, Bankier van het Verzet, the Resistance Banker. It's on Netflix. That's a World War II film, and it was basically the first movie that I VFX supervised. And it was right in this transition where I was kind of career-wise a little bit lost. I came from Design is Dead, which was an advertising agency, something completely different. And I fell into that one, and the subject matter, who doesn't want to work on a World War II period piece? You can go on set and see Nazis running around, and you have...
it's pretty cool.
There was also a lot of VFX work that I got to do myself, so I did some matte painting on those stuff, which I really love. If there's anything that of the VFX work that I enjoy the most doing myself, it's matte painting work. So yeah, that definitely has a place in my heart. That film, I really liked it.
Okay, cool.
And it was pretty amazing that my first feature.
Yeah, it was immediately such a
was
big,
already
big thing.
This big epic thing. So
that's great. Cool.
Big thanks to my colleagues at Planet X at the time for giving me the opportunity, for sure.
Nice. So we have the clarification on that last question.
All
so
right.
It was about the bidding. So how did you learn how to calculate
that's just experience.
Okay.
You just need to go through the motions and do it a couple of times to get a feel for how long things take, and never forget that everything in filmmaking is a team sport. There is no such thing as a one-man band thing on a feature film, on a TV show. Also in a studio, you have people that have done that work themselves. So always try to refer to experts if you have them. So if it's stuff pertaining to 3D work, we refer to the 3D leads or the 3D supervisors. If it's really heavy comping stuff, we ask advice to the lead compers, and so on and so on. And then you end up in a place that you are comfortable in saying, okay, that takes that amount of time to do. Yeah.
And I can imagine once you know your team a little bit better, it makes it a lot easier as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
because you
yeah,
can talk
yeah,
to them better.
yeah. Especially the senior people. Yeah, if you have a good senior staff in your studio, which you can rely on, that's invaluable. Because of course the teams they
come
grow
and
and
go,
shrink, but if you have that consistency there, that's amazing. Yeah, that's really handy to work with. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, that's all the questions. So,
All right.
yeah,
Thanks.
I want to thank you from all of us, not only for your time, but also for hosting us here as well. It's been really
It's
cool.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier during the break. I don't think it would have been so smooth if we hadn't been able to like talk to each other and communicate to each other if we had to do it from home.
Had to do it from remote. Yeah, it would be different.
Cool. So, yeah, with that said, we're going to take a quick break.